Welcome to the Piston Fanatic. I am your host, Dave Dalton, and I'm excited to share my passion and perspective of our Detroit Pistons as we go on this fantastic voyage together. I've been a diehard Piston fan since the days of Dave Bing and Bob Lanier. I've also been a varsity basketball coach of a very successful program in northern Michigan. Currently, my daughter and I are coaching one of the best AU teams in the country. Well, Piston fans, in today's episode, we're going to discuss the coaching carousel in the NBA. We're going to take a look at the Piston roster and what the players did their last season that we just completed, and also what their future looks like with the organization. We're also going to take a quick look at free agency and some of the rumored free agents that Piston fans are interested in. So let's start out with the coaching carousel. Ime Udoka, who many of you were real interested in. I did feel like from his resume standpoint that he was a good fit. He had that success with Boston. Of course, he took over a team that was very, very talented, but he pushed them and they made it, all the way to the finals. The biggest thing I think that was in his favor was he turned their defense around. They started out the season through January, they were about 500, and then their defense just completely turned around and dominated the NBA, and were by far the number one defense in the NBA. Well, he was never considered for the Pistons, and I think obviously was probably due to the character issues. So, he not only had an affair that was, against the organization rules in Boston, but he did some other things. There were some things that came out about how he really did some messaging, either, I don't know if it's on the internet or text messages that were really inappropriate. And so anyway, I think the Pistons and Troy Weaver are, they're really interested in character. And it is challenging when you have a person, that is expected, like the head coach, to hold their players to a high standard when he did not appear to hold himself to a high standard when he was in Boston. Now, he may turn out to be the best coach in the NBA. It could happen. But I do think that there's enough good candidates that probably had better character, that also have a lot of great attributes, that we didn't need to take a chance on him. And again, like I said, he was never mentioned in interviews. So right now what's happened is with the Pistons, we've done some Zoom interviews for the first interviews, and I think they're getting ready to go this week into a second round of interviews. And the three names still, like I mentioned before, were Jalen Collins, Charles Lee, and Kevin Ollie. So I just really, the more I've dug into and taken a look at Jalen Collins, the more I'm fascinated with him. So he was the defensive coordinator for the Warriors, and they were ranked, fifth in defense in the NBA. He also interviewed for the Bulls job in 2020, for the Grizzlies job in 2019, for the Hawks job in 2018. He turned down by Troy Jenkins, the head coach of the Grizzlies, offered him the lead coaching job there, the assistant job there. But currently, he's with the Pelicans, and anyway, a lot of people are really high on him. And the Warriors, I heard comments from the Warriors, from Steve Kerr, and so Draymond Green. So he was, for 3 years, he was the guy that prepared their defensive game plans, and Draymond Green said he was phenomenal. And I have my issues with Draymond, and I guess I'm going to talk about him right now. So Draymond played fantastic defense in the last Warriors win. But I just want to say, obviously he punched Jordan Poole before the season started, and then he kicked somebody, in the last game, and he got suspended for a game. And it's just not my kind of player when he can't control his emotions enough that he jeopardizes his team winning. They lost a championship, I think, in 2016 when he was playing incredibly well, but he just, again, could not control himself, and he thinks he's above it. And I know there are guys like that makes them tick. They are not wired the same, and so that's why they're able to play at an incredibly high level as Draymond is. He's not that gifted of an athlete. He's not that talented of a basketball player, but he is, one of the best defenders in history. and especially over the last 15 years. He's also one of the best passers for a forward. So I'm not saying Draymond's not incredibly good. I'm just saying that if I were the Warriors, I would not sign him to a big contract. And, obviously I think he's getting older and older, and just his character issues, I think, that was worth it to them. They wouldn't have won those championships without him. But anyway, he does know a lot about defense. He's a remarkable defensive player, and some people think the Pistons should sign him, and I am not one of those because of the reasons I mentioned, plus he's older, plus it would eat up a lot of salary cap. He's going to want a lot of money, so I think he's definitely not somebody I want for my Detroit Pistons. But let's get back to Jalen Collins. So Steve Kerr said he's got all the tools necessary to be a great head coach, and he said, he's a wonderful human being, and I know that's going to make a difference for Troy Weaver, and I think that's going to make a difference for me. So he said that he's a great teacher, he's a fine human being, and he also knows the game inside and out. And on top of it, he's very smart and funny. So those are not necessarily the funny part. Doesn't necessarily make you a great coach. Popovich, he has a kind of a dry humor, but he doesn't appear to be very funny. But anyway, I just think he's a good candidate. I had mentioned before that Charles Lee, the assistant from the Milwaukee Bucks, was my favorite choice. And Brian Keefe, I still haven't heard much about Brian Keefe, but he has got a tremendous resume, especially developing players. I mentioned Kevin Durant said he taught him everything he knows, and he helped develop Westbrook and Harden and other people. He's been the defensive coordinator for the Thunder in 2010 when they had a really good team, and for the Lakers when their defense was really good in 2016. He also helped develop Brandon Ingram. So anyway, I haven't heard much about him, but it does look like it's the three finalists appear to be Ali and Collins and Lee. And it wouldn't surprise me if somebody else jumped in there and something else happened, but those are the front runners right now. So some people that are Michigan fans, Caris LeVert played at Michigan. He's 6'6", he's 29 years old, and he's not a great defender, and we obviously need defense. He's going to want a bunch of money, and he's so scoring's his best attribute, and he's had some huge games, and he is a gifted scorer, but he scores at a below average efficiency rate. And so we have, if we have Bojan and Cade and Ivy and Duran and all those guys, they're going to want to score, and if LeVert's jacking up a bad percentage of shots, then that I don't think is going to be, somebody we want. Dylan Brooks, some people like him. I think that he's a jerk, and I think that he has some tenacity, and I'm sure that many people thought guys on the Bad Boys teams were jerks and hated them and thought they were lowlifes. But I just don't think like the way he acts, the things that he does. And he also is a bad shooter, and he shoots terrible percentage shots. I mean, he's not a great shooter, but if he would just shoot open good looks, then that would be another thing. But like right now, the Warriors aren't even guarding him because he's not a good shooter. So we don't need somebody that's going to have that attitude. I don't think he fits with the players that we have. I think we got some guys that are extremely hard workers and tough-minded, like Beef Stew and Cade, but we don't need somebody that's obnoxious. So I'm not in favor of getting him. Grant Williams is another guy. The Celtics have him. He's only 24. He's 6'6" and 230s, but he averaged only 8 points and 4 rebounds and 1.7 assists. 45%, but 39% on threes, which is good. And he does battle defensively. He's not a gifted athlete, though. And I still, again, don't think that he's going to want a big bag of money. And he's not that talented. I also have said this before. I expect us to win next year. I expect us to win, like I said, at least 15 more games than we did this year. But we still have some things to iron out before we want to spend some money. I think that not next year, but the following year is when we need to hand out some money to a guy that we think is going to be the missing piece. But we still are in the process. Ivy and Duran need to improve. Cade needs to get things. He's still only played the equivalent of one season in the NBA. And so we got a lot of guys that need to just still develop. I do think that we're going to win as we develop, especially if we have Bogey and Burks. So we'll see what happens with that. But I just think that those guys we're not in line to jump on those guys. Jalen McDaniels is for the Sixers now, but he was at Charlotte. The fact that Charlotte gave him up when he's 24 years old and 6'9" and a good defender leads me to think that something's wrong. He averaged 9.5 points, 4.3 rebounds, 1.6 assists. So I think that if we thought that he would fit in the roster and nobody else wanted to pay him and we were able to get him on a real team-friendly contract, that would be somebody I would be a little bit interested in. Cam Johnson is the guy that everybody wants, and I can see why, but and maybe we'll get him, but I can't see, most general managers around the league think that he's going to want like 4 years, $90 million. So he's going to want, over $24 million a year, and he's 27 already, and he's never played more than 66 games. He entered the draft quite old compared to other players, but he is a great player. He's had averaged 15 points a game, shot over 40% from three, and in the playoffs, they only played 4 games. They got swept by the Sixers, but I think, or maybe in 5 games. But he averaged 18.5 points, 5.8 rebounds, and 2.8 assists. So he upped his game in the playoffs. So that is a great thing, going forward. We're just going to go quickly through the Piston roster and talk about players and where they're at and where they could end up. But Marvin Bagley, he's still only 24. He's been around a long time, but he averaged 12 points a game, 6.4 rebounds, shot 53%, 75% from the line. And he showed some signs. His three-point percentage has not been good, but the last 19 games, the last 10 games only, he was 10 for 19 on threes. So he showed some signs there. The thing about him, though, is he can play out on the perimeter, and if he catches the ball, even if you back off him and that he's going to drive around you, he still can do it. And I mentioned this before, when he did get to play with Cade in the previous year. This year he never got to play with Cade a minute, and he had 33 dunks off alley-oops from Cade. So people want to trade him, and I'm not opposed to trading Bagley, but you have to find somebody else who wants to trade for him that will give you something for him. So, of course, his injuries are a factor, and his contract is for $12.5 million a year for 2 more years. So my thoughts with him is, if you got something real valuable, or not real valuable, but that you felt like would be a positive asset for us, then I would pull the trigger. But I don't think that we have these big guys, and it seems like always since we've had them, always one of them at least is injured. And I think Bagley is a bench player to come off the bench and to start if there's injuries, but he certainly can offer offense. He did show signs of rebounding. He has a stretch where he was really aggressive rebounding. His stats aren't that great, but I tell you, he didn't average that many minutes. I don't know if he averaged even 24 minutes a game. So that's why stats can be deceptive when you talk about averages. If somebody will talk about Alec Burks later, but he averaged a lot less minutes than like Bogey, and that's the next player we're going to talk about. Bojan Bogdanovic. I love watching him play. He is a cool guy. I love what he brings to the team. He can score off the three. He's an incredible shooter. But I was so impressed, I didn't realize how good he was at driving to the basket. He's really clever. I mean, he's not fast or athletic, but he can score. He can shoot over and at a really efficient rate. His problem is defensively, he's not a great defender. He's not great laterally, but he did average 21.6 points a game, 3.8 rebounds, 2.6 assists, shot 49% from the field and 41% on threes and 88% on free throws. And there's very, very few guys that have averaged 50% from the floor, 40% on threes, and 90% on free throws. And he just missed those by a little bit, but he's getting paid $20 million a year, and we have him for next year for $20 million, and then the following year we have him for $19 million, but we have an option that we only have to pay him like $2 million or $5 million if we want to just buy him out. So he's got a real great contract. We could trade him before the year, especially if we see we were going to draft somebody like Brandon Miller, or we could trade him next year at the trade deadline, or we could even trade him the following summer if we felt like it. So it's going to be real fascinating to see, but unless we get something that we feel is real value, I don't think that we'll trade him. Again, I really enjoy watching him play, and he, I think, could be a real great piece to winning. Again, another downside to having him is we have all these mouths to feed. Again, if Cade shoots 20 times a game and Ivy shoots 18 times a game, there's only so many shots to go around. So that is the problem, because he does deserve to get shots. So, but he's older. He probably is not going to be in our long range plans like 3 years from now. So Alec Burks, he's 6'6", he's only 31 years old. He averaged almost 13 points, 2.2 assists, 44% from the floor, 41.4% on threes, which is marvelous, 81% on free throws. We only have to pay him $10 million a year next year, and he is a steal at $10 million a year. So, and we could trade him going into the draft. But so my example, I've used this before with NBA players, they're per 36 minutes. So if you extrapolated his statistics over 36 minutes, he would average 21 points, 5.1 rebounds, and 3.7 assists. So those are, right up there with Bogey, maybe in some ways even better. But Bogey played more like 30 minutes. He didn't play 36 minutes average, but he did play, significantly more than Burks. So Cade Cunningham, my player, and I am so excited. I do really think that his three-point shot is going to be drastically improved. He has improved his form. He's gotten stronger. But so he averaged 19.9, but he only played 12 games. If you take off his last game, so the last game where he shut down immediately afterward, they hardly played him any minutes. He played 20 minutes or less, and he was like 1 for 11. So that last game really, when you're only averaging for 12 games, it really reduces your average. But his average was over 21 before that last game, and then 6 assists, only 42% from the floor, which he did way better at the end, and only 28% on threes, which is, again, the big thing that I'm real confident is going to improve, because he did shoot 84% on free throws. And most guys that are good free throw shooters are good shooters, and they can improve their three-point shot. So he's making $11 million a year next year, and the following year he will make $14 million. And then if the team does the team option, he'll be eligible for an extension after next season. And I'm sure we will try any chance we get to lock him down for the maximum number of years, we will do that. So Hamidou Diallo, 24 years old only. It's crazy he's that young still. And he averaged 9.3 points, 3.5 rebounds, only 1 assist, 57% from the floor, which he was even better at the end of the year, which is incredible for a guy. He's only like 6'5", but he was so efficient. 23% on threes, but he hardly shot any. So he completely quit shooting them at the end of the year. He is an unrestricted free agent. So, I don't know. The only way we will keep him probably is if he signs for a reasonable amount of money. I know Troy loves him, and he was with Troy in Oklahoma City, but he deserves to be paid. He appears to be a guy that could come off the bench and really help even a great team. So especially if they had injuries, or if you're in the playoffs and things aren't going well, and you throw him in there, and he's going to make a lot of positive things happen. So the Jalen Duren, a boy playing among men, like a man playing among boys, and he's again 19 years old. Thing about Duren is he has this enormously high floor, I mean, if you said that this year was his floor, and that is incredible. He still was a great NBA player. He averaged 9 points, almost 9 rebounds, 1.1 assists, only 65% on free throws, but he really improved that. His per 36, he would have averaged 13 points and almost 13 rebounds, including over 4 offensive rebounds per game. So, he is, but the sky's the limit for him, and he's so cheap. Next year, $4.3 million. The following year, $4.5 million. So that's why we got to really get this thing going, man. When we got all these players that we have on they're young, and so they're such, team-friendly contracts. So, 2025, 2026, he'll only be making $6.4 million, and he's far going to exceed that. I think that year we could give him an extension and pay him more. So, anyway, he's a potential all-star. He's amazing, and his passing ability that he showed flashes of, his offensive moves which he showed flashes of, are incredible. And so I think the sky's the limit. I think he's going to go in one direction, and that is straight up. So Killian Hayes, he's a tough one, man. He's had 3 years, and he has had some injuries, but he is an enigma. Troy drafted him 7th. They've given him every chance. He started lots of games. He's got to play lots of minutes at different times. He's been the worst shooter in the league, the last couple of years. He averaged 10.3 points, almost 3 rebounds, 6.2 assists, which is very good. Shot 37% from the floor overall and 28% on threes. But he's had some stretches that are just terrible. But he makes we re-signed him for $7.4 million for next year. We gave him the extension, and at the end of next year, he will be a restricted free agent. So we can match. If a team offers him, we can match them. We can trade him. But my thing is, he's been most efficient when he's had the ball in his hands. And he did have a 33-game stretch where he was more than a solid NBA player. But the problem is, before that 33-game stretch and after that 33-game stretch, his shooting was his three-point shooting was in the teens. And so I just don't think that you can, keep that around. Another thing I guess I'll just mention right now, when I talked about Cade, and I'm going to talk about Ivy in a minute. So my thing after seeing the revelation of Jaden Ivey and what he did playmaking this year, that we would be foolish not to stagger Cade and Ivy and have them out on the court, one of them on the court every minute with the ball in their hands. So I don't think that we need another point guard. Sure, Killian would be great because guys get injured and you need a backup. And so you could, but there's ways. If you get a smart coach, you can stagger and make sure you always have Ivy on the court or Cade on the court at the same time at one time or another, so that one of them was always out there. Or they also can play together. So they both need to play over 30 minutes or more a game, but make sure that one of them always has the ball in their hands. So. And Ivy's the next guy I was going to talk about anyway. He's only 21, and he averaged 16.3, 3.9 rebounds, 5.2 assists, which just went way up at the end of the year. 41% from the floor, 34% on threes, which his three-point percentage really improved as the year went on. 74% on free throws. So he is he's blown me away. He's far exceeded any expectations that I ever dreamt of him, and I am so excited about his future going forward. But he's next year we only have to pay him $7.6 million, and the following year $7.9 million, and then the following year $10 million. So we will have a team option for that. So he's going to be tremendous, and he's going to be a great player. And if we even draft Scoot, I still think that all three can play. I talked about it before. There's among the 2 guard spots, there's 96 minutes. So even if every one of them played 32 minutes, which is a good number, that would be the 96 minutes. So Isaiah Livers, He's a hard one. I was so optimistic coming into the season. I think he's going to be a good shooter. He showed signs his rookie year, which is he only played like 19 games. He didn't shoot it quite as well this year. He shot 37% on threes, and that's still decent. He is a good defender. I felt badly that he was injured. He was injured coming out of college, or he probably would have been a first-round pick. He was injured almost his whole rookie year, which stunk. And then this year was going to be his big chance. And then we shut some players down at the end of the year, and I thought he was going to get all kinds of chances. And he did get some, but he still got injured again. So he still missed some opportunities to play, and he didn't always shoot or play consistently. But I do think there's definitely a place on the roster for him. He's only going to make $1.8 million next year, and then we'll have a team option. So I think he'll be inexpensive, and I think he's a great person and a great connector on defense, and I think that he will, be well worth what we're going to pay him to have him on the roster, whether he gets to play or not. So Isaiah Stewart, Stewart, we shut him down at the end of the year. I'm pretty sure he probably could have come back. He started out the year not shooting the three. This was the big year to experiment with him shooting the three ball, and he struggled a little bit at first, and he really hit a stride and had a really good stretch for over a month where he shot at a high rate. And then he hurt his shoulder, and so you always wonder about, when there's a player has a significant decline, how much injuries impacted, and I'm not sure about that, but he did shoot far worse after he hurt his shoulder. But he shot great. He had, at the end, just before he finally was shut down, he had a couple great games with the three. But he is the kind of player, Troy Weaver loves him. Everybody says he's Troy's favorite player. But I'm not positive where he fits. I think that he is a great guy that you would want on a really good team to come off your bench and bring energy and toughness, and especially if he can shoot the three. And he's an excellent defender. He's not a great vertical athlete. He can't get up. He can't block shots. He can't finish around the rim, which has been a really hard thing. His percentage among centers is really low for finishing around the rim. But this is going to be an interesting thing. We extended him, gave him the rookie extension for this coming year for $5.2 million. We can extend him this summer, but it's going to depend on what he wants. And so if he demands a lot of money, so that's what somehow our organization knew that Sadiq was going to want a big bag. And so we didn't want to pay him that. And so that's part of the reason we unloaded him. But I'm not sure what Stewart is going to expect or want. And so at worst case scenario, if they talked extension, he wanted more than what we felt comfortable paying him, we still have him under contract for next year. And then at the end of next year, then he would be a restricted free agent. So whatever anybody offered, we could match it and still keep him. So James Wiseman, same draft class, but he's 22 years old. He played 25 minutes a game. He averaged 12.7, 53% from the floor, 71% on free throws. He averaged 8.1 rebounds, and he showed flashes of brilliance. He's long and talented. He had a chip on his shoulder. I know he has a lot to prove. I know he's had a frustrating career so far and didn't get opportunities. He had some injuries, but he did show some flashes of being an incredibly talented player. He's over 7 foot. He's athletic. He's got skills. And so we have him signed for next year for $12 million a year. And then after that, he would be a restricted free agent. So we could extend him this summer, but I'm not sure. I doubt we will. And so I think that we're going to play the wait and see. And then if he blows up and does really great next year, then we'll just have to go ahead and sign him. So, I didn't talk about Kojo and Magruder, and they're going to be free agents, unrestricted, and they've been great veterans. They've been a great presence. You just can tell the guys on the team love them because they're great guys, and they compete hard every time they get on the court. And I guess it's just going to depend on how many roster spots we have and how much money they want, and if anybody else offers them anything. So we'll see. But thank you for listening. I appreciate it so much that you take the time to listen, and I'm excited about this. We got so much with the coaching thing and the Lottery is going to be May 16th. So, but thanks for listening. If you're listening on Spotify, leave a 5-star review. If you're listening on YouTube, subscribe. A lot of people don't do that. I know maybe I don't do it with every podcast I listen to, but I would sincerely appreciate you subscribing and clicking on the thumbs up if you like this episode. Do something nice for somebody today, make their day better, and go Pistons.